Hey guys, and welcome to another season of the Us People podcast. I'm your host, Savia, and in this season, we uncover the remarkable power of genuine compassion and insightful vision. This season, we're here to show the world that we, as individuals, are the brand, regardless of misconceptions. Join us as we go deep into the inspiring journeys of our guests, each one a testament to the impact and influence of kindness and creativity. Don't just take my word for it. Hear their stories, feel their passion, and discover the transformative potential within us all. So stay tuned as we shine a light on the truths that connects us and inspires change.
Hello, I'm Sally Freedman. I'm an award-nominated author with my book, Get Your Tits Out for the Lads, and you're listening to Us People podcast with Savia Rocks.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Us People podcast. I'm your host, Savia Rocks, and today I am humbled to have Sally Freedman here with me. She is a professional in the world of sports, which is really interesting. It's always a wonderful thing to have a woman in sports because there's so much to talk about there. But she's also a nominated award-winning author as well. So for me, that is a beautiful thing. So Sally, I want to thank you so much for taking your time to come on the Us People podcast. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you very much, Savia. Thank you very much for having me. I'm well, thank you.
That's excellent. So my first question for you, Sally, is could you tell me a bit about yourself, where you grew up, and how that influenced you to be the person who you are today?
Sure. So I was born in Scotland, Edinburgh. I grew up in Brighton in England, or Hove, just next to it. And I grew up with two older brothers and a family that loved football. So from the age of 2, I think football was introduced to me, watching, playing, and I've always loved sport in general, but football was probably the number one sport in our household. So I've had a passion for the sport from a young age. However, in England growing up as a young girl in the 80s, I wasn't allowed to play football at school. I was told firmly by my PE teacher that football was only for boys and that girls could only play hockey or netball. And at 7 years old, I already understood that wasn't fair. So I think that ignited a fire in my belly. And fast forward to, I guess, 2007 was a big milestone for me. I was awarded an academic scholarship to study a master's in sport management at Griffith University in Australia. And I went over there for a year to study and ended up staying 11 years, hence my weird sounding accent. And in Australia, I forged a career within sport. In football, predominantly, I worked for the AFC Asian Cup in 2015. I worked for Football Australia, which is the governing body. I worked for Melbourne City Football Club, Wellington Phoenix Football Club in New Zealand. And lastly, I worked for the Commonwealth Games in 2018 in the Gold Coast. And I decided after 11 years it was time to come back to Europe, or a bit closer to home, where my family were based, and I was fortunate enough to be successful in a recruitment application process for a job at UEFA, the European governing body of football in Switzerland. And in 2018, I went to work there, and I worked there for 4 years. Some highs, some lows. I worked in marketing communication as a content writer, online promotion, lots of different projects. And I left in 2022. And I penned my book, which you talked about in the introduction. Yes. And I think that's what we're going to focus on a little bit throughout this interview. So I won't give away too much yet. But the book is a memoir and it shines a light on sexism in the workplace.
And this is something that I always like to talk about. I like to talk about uncomfortable conversations, which bring out the goodness, I should say, in what needs to change in the world. And that's a beautiful thing in itself. So my next question for you, Sally, is can you define yourself as a person, but also who do you see when you look in the mirror? But on the flip side of that question, Has there ever been a time, Sally, where you have looked in the mirror and not recognized the person staring back at you? How did you manage to go from a place of maybe where you felt you didn't have purpose, it wasn't the place where you wanted to be, to becoming a person where you felt you had purpose and power within yourself?
Sure. So penning the book was escapism for me.
Yes.
It was frustration. It was a release of frustration. And sexism is a topic that unfortunately I don't think is talked about freely enough. A lot of women experience it but don't feel brave enough to speak up. They're scared that they might lose their job. They're scared they might get into trouble. Yeah. And I felt like that too. And so my solution was to write a book, and I hoped that if I got lucky that it might give me a tiny bit more of a voice than I had prior. Because every time I spoke up about sexism during working, it was often like I was talking to a brick wall, or, you know, I was patronized. There, Sally, yes, we hear you, we talked about it, move on now, stop being a feminist, those kind of lines. So it's hard when you're always fighting an upward battle. And it got to the point where, as you heard, I left UEFA after 4 years, and I was looking for that purpose, and I was very fortunate to receive a contract to write a book, which is not easy. And I was a little bit scared at the beginning because although I'm a writer, I'd never written anything that long. So I had to learn strategy and process as to how to write a book, and my first one. But it gave me what you said, purpose, direction. I was so passionate about the topic. I consider myself now a gender equality expert. Yes. I researched the topic for over a year. Not only did I write my own true stories, but I also backed it up with academic research. So the book is intertwined with my stories, but research as well to back up what I'm saying. Excellent. Because I feared that people wouldn't necessarily believe everything I was saying, although I know it's the truth. I understand that research adds another element. So I'm a gender equality expert now, passionate about women's rights, especially in the world of sport.
The one thing I would love to ask you is okay, there is ego, there is pride. Ego plays a huge part in the reason why there is so much sexism. But there's also something else that I've noticed. When a woman is strong in her field and an expert in her field, I've noticed that a lot of men become very defensive, and I've noticed that a lot of men feel intimidated by this.
Correct.
Rather than embracing a woman and seeing her as an ally, why do you feel that men have to be this egotistical way and use sexism as a way of maybe pushing a woman back or making her feel lower than what she is?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I've definitely experienced what you've described throughout my career. In Australia, there's a term called the tall poppy syndrome, and it means exactly what you've just described, that instead of seeing a strong, independent, resilient woman as an asset, they see us as a threat. And it happened in England in football, playing football. Not that long ago, the English FA banned women from playing football for 50 years. Not many people know that, but the story of that is in the book, and it's true. And the reason that England were banned for playing football for more than 50 years was because they were doing well. They were pulling crowds of over 50,000, and the men went, oh, hang on a minute, they're better than us. We can't have this. I know what we'll do. We'll stop them from playing. And that happened. Why men do that? I don't know that I'm the right person to answer that question. I guess it's a question for the men in the world that are, I guess, exerting those forms of behavior. But one thing I will say, and I say this throughout my book, sometimes sexism, I don't blame men. It's subconscious. It's growing up in a world of gender stereotypes. Mm-hmm. It can be casual sexism. It's not always the fault of men being intentionally sexist. Mm. They are doing it due to a gendered stereotype world that we've brought in, subconscious bias, and they necessarily haven't received the education to make them realize what they're doing is sexist or what they're saying is sexist. So I think there are obviously cultural genetic differences between men and women, and we have to appreciate those. And some of those genetics and cultures and the way we're brought up as boys, as girls, will play a part in our persona and who we are. So potentially that plays a part in, you know, why men can often take on the typical alpha male persona, and sadly that comes with, yeah, like you said, lowering women as though they are inferior.
See, that's the part I hope that we I hope that we continue to fight to change, because it's hard for us as women. Especially, the one thing I do love is that I'm seeing more women in football, because if we went back maybe about 30 years, maybe yes, women were playing football, but you didn't see it as much as you do now. Because even I have friends who play football, and they always tell me exactly what they go through, and then there's so many stories I can share. But I would like to ask you, especially because I know you've written a book, and I know we're going to get into the book in a second, but is there a story that you can share just to highlight from the book, even a story that you've been through where something has, how can I say, ignited a flame in you to say,
Sure,
the reason why this needs changing, or this has happened to me, and the reason why you felt it happened?
yes, there are many anecdotes within the book, and this question was one I was asked quite regularly at the beginning. Sally, give us a teaser, give us a flavour. What's one of the stories? And I always go to one of the ones that comes early on in the book. So to give context, I was working as head of fan engagement at a football club. My job was to film some players match day -1 at their training session the day before a match at the stadium, a male football team. And I was responsible for videoing, interviewing, editing, all that kind of stuff, posting. So I went to the stadium to do my job. And I arrived a little bit early. And before I started, I needed to use the bathroom. And I went to the female bathroom and it was locked. So I found the facilities manager and I asked the facilities manager if they could please open the female toilet. And they looked at me and they said, no, you can just use the men's. And when he said you can just use the men's, he meant the men's toilets that were inside the male changing room, where the current professional footballers were getting changed, possibly showering, possibly peeing. So he wanted me to walk through a male changing room, open plan urinals, showers, etc., and go to the toilet in there. So I knew that wasn't what I was going to do. And so I asked again, no, can you please open the female toilets? And he said, oh, it will cost too much time and money. You can just use the men's to clean. We'll have to clean them after. Wow. I couldn't quite believe, this was not that long ago, what I was hearing. And I'm very calm, as you can probably hear in my voice. I'm very professional, astute. I never lose it in a work setting, or never. But in this instance, I raised my voice, I admit. And I said something along the lines of, I will not use the men's toilets. You will open the female toilets. Because last time I checked, men's toilets don't have sanitary bins. Yes. But if you prefer, I can go and put my sanitary towel down the men's toilet, and I'm pretty sure that a block toilet is going to cost you more time and money than it will if you just please open the female toilet. And he reluctantly at that point trampled off, got the key, and came back 10 minutes later to open the bathroom. And I said to him, you realise I'm going to be here every week match day -1, or every other week match day -1. So please can you make sure that this bathroom is unlocked in future? And the next week came by and I went to use the bathroom, and you know what's coming. Okay. It was locked. And at this point, you said, what was the moment where you felt like the fire in your belly sparked? I crashed. I fell against the door. I sat in a curled ball, cried, and thought, I'm invisible. I can't even do my job here. Why am I here? And that incident is one time, but it happened, I would say, at least 6 or 7 others. Women, again, men just don't think. They are so used to the environment being dominated by men, and only men working in that field, so that when they've normally opened up the stadium for match day -1, they haven't had to open the female bathroom because no females have been in that environment before. So it's a slip of their mind that gives them some leeway into as to why. But then to when they're asked to even not do it, that was another level of sexism. That's stupidity, in my opinion.
You're lucky it wasn't me. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I'd
like
only
that.
just started working at the club. Otherwise, maybe I would have done something a bit worse. But raising my voice was even
I think
strange for me.
I think I get really creative with people, and because I always study the psychology of a person's mind, I find it very intriguing to me to do things out of the norm, which, you know, my grandma always said to me, and I don't know if people will agree with this, but I always find it quite funny. My grandmother always said to me, a woman who follows rules never gets remembered. And I said, are you sure you want me to be a troublemaker, Gran? So, so for me, I said, okay, well, if that's the case, then I'm always going to be creative in how I respond to people and what I do. But it doesn't mean that I'm not professional in that mannerism towards them. I think it's just opening people's mindsets a little bit more to make them understand that sometimes the way that you do things is closed-minded. So if you just hear a different perspective from someone to make them understand why, regardless if it's culture-wise, sexism, religion, you can become better even in yourself, you know, and having these conversations help. So Sally, regardless of what you did, I'm glad that you've done it. So my next question for you is, Sally, let's talk about the book now, because I'm intrigued by it, and I'm sure everybody else is now. I'm sure anybody who is a football fan, and even being a photographer in football, I understand some of the concepts that you go through, because even as women, we all go through it. So I believe we all should be allies in this to make it stand out, to stand up for it. So please talk to me about the power of your book and the power of words within your book, and why you decided to even come together and write it, just so we can understand it a little bit more.
Sure. So the title of the book is Get Your Tits Out for the Lads. Mm-hmm. So a very eye-catching, memorable title. And the subheading is True Stories from a Woman in Football. Yes. As I mentioned, it's a memoir. So it's chronological. It starts in 2004 in Portugal, when I went to UEFA Euro men's tournament to follow England. And that's the story behind the title is revealed in the first chapter. And it won't take rocket science to work out that it involves lots of men chanting, get your tits out for the lads. So thank you to those men for giving me my book title, yes. If nothing else. So yes, it starts then, and it follows my career, and it showcases sexism in Australia, in New Zealand, in Switzerland, in England, lots of different stories. And as I said, it's not an attack on men. I wrote it because I wanted to showcase that sexism is systemic. Yes. It's everywhere, and we need to do more to call it out. I wanted to be brave and speak up, because I firmly believe that if we stay silent, nothing's going to change. That's a bit true. Like what your grandma said, like break the rules. We have to have a voice. And I felt it was very difficult to talk to my colleagues, family, friends about this topic. It was all inside me. It was all bubbling under the surface. And I thought, I know that writing always helps me. It's a way of expressing myself. And I was very fortunate that the publisher heard me talking on a podcast about sexism that I'd experienced at a football match in England at Wembley between England and Italy, the Euro final not that long ago, the men's. It was a disgrace. It was horrible. It was a story that was shocking, and I joked, I said on the podcast, you know, this isn't an isolated incident. I have enough stories for a book. Mm-hmm. And I said it tongue in cheek. But the publisher was listening, and she got in touch, and she said, hey, Sally, if you're going to write a book, will you let me publish it? And I said, whoa, I just sort of said it tongue in cheek. I have maybe a chapter here and a back cover here and a story here and a diary entry here, but there's no book in this. Well, let me see. Send me what you've got. And so I hurriedly got together bits here and bits there, hard drive here, laptop here, blog here, and put it all together in a haphazard way. And it was a mess, but I sent it off. And she said, I'd like to publish your book. And then I thought, oh my gosh, how do I write a book? So I got very fortunate with the publisher coming to me, because that's one of the hardest things about publishing or writing a book, is finding a publisher. And that gave me, I guess, once I'd sent her little snippets and she liked it, I was like, okay, maybe there is something in this. Maybe I can do it. Let's try. I'd quit my job. I had time on my hands because writing a book doesn't happen overnight. And I saw it as a project, a challenge, mainly for me, just to see if I could do it. And as I say, for escapism, for my mental health, to really help process what had been going on in my career, in my life for the last 15, 20 odd years. And it was very therapeutic. And I was very fortunate in 2024, so a year after publication, it was nominated for the best football book in England in association with the Sunday Times. Yes. I was the only female author in the category, of course. There were 9 others, and they were all male. I didn't win, but I was very, I guess, proud to be nominated. And I experienced a wonderful night at the Oval with lots of other writers and authors. And I got lucky as well with the time of publication. It was published in 2023 in Australia, just before the Women's World Cup. And if we think back to 2 years ago, when the Women's World Cup was being hosted in Australia, there's one story that I'm sure comes to the front of everyone's mind. And it was when Louis Rubiales kissed Jenny Hermoso on the lips. And suddenly sexism was in the news for 3 weeks, every single day. Headline news. It was like a Netflix series, and now it is. And my book had just been published, and I wrote about something very similar happening to me, and I called it out. And then suddenly it happened on the world stage, and the only positive I can take from that situation is that people finally listened. But it's sad that it took that incident, and it's sad that those girls who won the World Cup against all odds and so much a backdrop of adversity prior with 15 players dropping out and all of this controversy. They went and won, and it was a fairy tale, and it was amazing, and their achievement was stolen from them by headlines of a kiss. And that is so sad.
It is sad because there are so many situations in life that I find and see where something spectacular happens, but magically, and I say this in quotations, something else manages to come and cover it. Because again, it's the intimidation of knowing that something is better or greater has happened, and that other person might not be able to achieve it. I've seen it in music so many times. I've seen it in sports. I've seen it in so many industries. And this is something that needs to be highlighted tremendously in order for it to change. But there's one thing I've noticed with you. I can see the passion of what you do and the reason why you do. So you found your purpose a long time ago, you know.
Thank you.
So for me, I can always understand where, and I can always feel a passion of when somebody finds something that means something to them. So I kind of see you as an activist in what you do. Who are some of the activists in the world that you believe give you a push, make you say, this is something that I love doing, this is the reason why I do it? Is there anybody that you would like to highlight who you feel stands up in the same way that you do to make a difference?
Well, thank you for saying that. And it's great to be reminded of that, because if I'm honest, I am, as you hear correctly so, very passionate about the topic. But believe me, even as an independent, resilient, strong woman, I'm tired. I'm tired of fighting an upward battle. I'm tired of not being listened to, especially now, recently. I don't even want to mention the name, but I will. Trump and his views on equality and diversity. There's a real movement of, feminism, it's gone too far. Be quiet, enough now. And when you fought for so hard against, or you've been brave enough to speak up about the topic, and then this comes again, you're like, I don't know how much more I can actually take. Is this a battle worth fighting anymore? So that's the first part of your question, just a reflection. The second part, you asked me what other people are sort of my inspiration. Well, the book that inspired me to write is by an author called Adam Kay. He's British. He was an NHS doctor, and he quit, and he's now a stand-up comedian, and he's written loads of other books, and he's very successful. I don't know if you've heard of him or know him, but his book I could not put down. It's written in a very sarcastic, witty style, honest, open, raw, and very humorous. And I laughed, I cried, It's very rare for me to read a book back to back with very small breaks. But this book over a weekend, I was addicted. I was hooked. So he's one person that definitely inspired my writing. And the way he spoke out, I know it's a completely different topic, but he spoke out and he was honest about how bad it was being a junior doctor in the NHS. And I felt like I had a similar story about how bad it was to be a woman working in football. So he's definitely one. And then there are countless others, but I won't name them all because I'll forget one and then I'll feel bad. But there are, that's my nature. There are lots of now male allies speaking up. Yes. Ian Wright is wonderful, I think. I met him in Australia very briefly. He kindly posed for a photo with my book. He didn't need to do that. You know, he got a lot of slack recently in the press for another story about not sticking up for women's football. I consider the complete opposite. I think he's wonderful. I don't know him well. I met him once for 2 minutes. So, you know, I'm just going based on a very small meeting. But from what I've heard him say and how I see his social media posts and what he does for women's football, I think he's wonderful. So there are some male allies that are getting on side too. And Brighton and Hove Albion, I'll mention them too. They're the club that I've grown up supporting, following my entire life. And I think they are doing great things with their women's football team. They are looking to build the first women's purpose-built stadium in the UK. And they're even looking at their funding research with the university to see if the surface that women play on should be different. Because, yeah, we all play on grass, we think that's best, but why do women get ACL injuries 7 times more than men? It potentially could be to do with the surface. The boots are different, our body moves different, and they're funding research into that. And they're treating their women in the way they should be as professional athletes. So there's a couple of inspirations in my life.
Which is beautiful as well. One of the things that I do want to ask you, which actually I find exceptional, even before people come on the show, I ask a question. And in the write-up, I always say, what is a common misconception about your field that you would like to clear up? Do you remember? A common
misconception that I'd like to clear up. I think I've already mentioned it, that it's an attack on men, that it's men's fault. Sometimes it is. I'm not defending all men, because some men and women are idiots. We're both guilty. But I think the misconception is that that's why it happens, and it's their fault. I think that actually it's, as I've said at the beginning, that subconscious growing up in a gendered stereotype world from early on, reading books where the woman is a fairy and a princess and the man is the hero, going to the shops and seeing everything pink for girls and everything blue for boys. Yes. Those are stories in movies, stories in books, stories on the news. There are so many things that shape our thoughts. And that's why sexism happens sometimes as well, or it certainly contributes to it. So that's a misconception.
One of the questions that I do like to ask my guests, which I find very important, is when was the last time that you felt totally at peace with yourself? The reason why I asked this question is because I remember you saying you feel tired, for example. And there's only so much that we can do as human beings in this world, regardless if we're humanitarians, regardless if we're activists. But when was the last time, Sally, that you felt totally at peace with yourself?
Oof, good question. I think I rode the wave just after the book was published. Yes. I was on a high. It got lots of media attention, much more than I ever dreamt of or expected, purely gracias Louis, because serendipity timing, the book came out at that time, and then the media came after me in a positive way to talk. And of course, I can't believe my luck. I'm on a high. My book's getting attention. I've got a voice. I said I wrote the book as I had a tiny hope that maybe it would give me a tiny voice, more than I had before. Yes. And then suddenly I'm doing media interviews with the BBC in England, Australia, New Zealand, Switzerland, England daily. And I think, I've achieved my dream. I'm at peace. I've got a voice. Suddenly people are listening to me. Wow. You know, I pat on the back, Sally. And that was the last time it felt great. Sadly, for personal reasons, after that, I went through a very tough period, and I don't mind sharing. I had 3 months after being on a real high, I had a hat trick of unfortunate events where I lost a job. I lost my mother unexpectedly, who I was extremely close to, and then I ruptured my Achilles playing tennis. So in the space of 3 months, I went from being up here on cloud nine to being rock bottom. So I'm coming out the other side now, and it will get better, and it has got better. But yeah, life is a roller coaster. So you can be at peace one day, and then the next day you can feel rubbish again. And it's learning to get through those tough days and know that it's just a chapter in time, and you'll be okay.
What is the best advice you believe that you've received from someone, and how has it helped you in your life? I know we go through moments where, like you say, you go through things, but I know there are, even if it's not one specific thing, I know there are moments in our life where a person may come and give you advice at that right time in your life when you need it the most. But what is something that you always remember in your mind that triggers the goodness of advice for you?
I think before I went traveling, a few people told me, I went for a year backpacking solo around the world when I was a lot younger. And they told me, you know, life is short, grab every opportunity that comes your way because you might not get the chance again. And when you're young, you don't think about death. You don't think that you could die tomorrow and be run over a bus. You think you're almost going to live forever. We're all a little bit naive, unless you've experienced grief and you've had a loved one die, as I have recently. Your perspective then on life changes considerably. Well, it has for me. But at that point, you know, life is short is just kind of a throwaway saying. But as we get older, my gosh, life really is short. Do what you love. Be kind. There isn't enough kindness in the world. Grab every opportunity that comes your way. I certainly try and live by that because, yeah, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Of course, we need to be sensible and we need to, you know, not spend money like it grows on trees, and we can't do every single thing that we want to. But live life, enjoy yourself, find things that like you have noticed that light that fire in your belly. Life's definitely too short to do a job that you hate.
Yes.
To sit there every day for 8 hours not liking your job. Of course, there will be times where you don't like your job. We all have days like that. But if you're disliking your job for 8 hours every day, you'll spiral into, I believe, a very big black hole.
I call it the soulless spiral. That's what I call it.
Yes, find that thing that sparks your soul.
Yes.
And the other thing that my grandpa, late grandpa, so my dad's dad, said to me when I was young, he was a great writer too, and he used to write me poems. I found one of his poems the other day, and it was about perseverance and resilience. And I think those traits run through my veins. To write the book, I had to persevere, I had to be resilient, to speak up. Obviously, I need to be brave and courageous. But he wrote this beautiful poem that has stuck with me. I read it as a child, and I read it recently, so it's here. And it was about milk turning into butter and how the churn of life, and he related that to perseverance and resilience. So that's another piece of advice that always sits close to my heart.
Sounds like a wise man, especially with words.
Yes, maybe where I get it from. Thanks, Grandpa.
Yeah, I like that. Thanks, Grandpa.
Hope you're listening somewhere up
I'm
there.
sure he is, to be quite fair. I'm sure he is. Sometimes I always believe that our ancestors, as we put them, kind of guide us to meet the right people in order for us to do our purpose in life. So that's one of the most fundamental and beautiful things I find in life, is that. So there's another question I have, which I do like to ask, which is about happiness. Now, my question is, what do you believe stands in your way from finding complete happiness? And happiness is something that is different for each and every person. But for you, Sally, what do you believe stands in your way from... It's not an achievement, because happiness shouldn't be an achievement. It should be something that is desired within you to fulfill for yourself. But what do you believe stands in your way from complete happiness?
I think at the moment, my biggest concern about what's preventing happiness is the use of technology. I know we're using it right now to do this podcast, which is wonderful. But in general, AI, screens, social media, I think have more negative, or there's a risk of negative consequences.
I do agree with you.
And it's moving at such a rapid rate that it's frightening. I'm hearing daily from friends that are parents that have kids, that there are problems at school. And what's the cause? The phones. Always. Phones, phones, phones. Screen time. I myself, I hate it. I'm guilty of mindless scrolling sometimes. They are designed, the apps, to be addictive. And we are consuming so much rubbish. We don't know what is true anymore. We don't know what is fake.
Yes.
There is so much information. Our phones listen to everything that we're saying. AI can write a letter in 3 seconds. That's reasonable. I don't have a job anymore as a writer, potentially. You know, there are so many things in my head that are like, okay, we need to embrace this technology, but my gosh, it does stop me being happy, because it also it prevents, especially the young people that don't know any different. They don't know how to communicate in person. They don't know how to say hi in the street. They don't know how to have a chat. They don't know how to go into the workplace and have a coffee and just have a chat about anything, nothing. Those are such important life skills. Reading maps, like sending a message and then getting anxious because someone hasn't replied, or someone hasn't got the 2 ticks or whatever they're feeling, and they've taken over an hour to reply and they don't like me anymore. Like when I was a kid, I picked up the landline, left a message from my friend that was out, and I had to wait patiently for them to call me back. Exactly. But I didn't feel anxious waiting. I just got on with my day. And it's all of those things. So I think that's my biggest fear at the moment that's preventing happiness, is too much technology, and the negative sides of it I'm worried about for everyone. For me, for the young kids especially growing up that don't know the difference. I think personally life was better without phones, before phones.
Yeah, I agree with you. I remember there was a time where, and it's similar to what you actually just said, my friend would call me on the house phone, and she would say, meet me in this place in 20 minutes. Yeah. And it was so cool because we were there, and even if you had to wait an extra 10 minutes or 5, you didn't mind. You know,
exactly.
like,
you can't text and go, oh, sorry, I'm late, or, oh, I'm not coming today. That's the other thing. Phones make it so easy to fail.
Accessible. It's too accessible.
It's too easy to be nasty, to be a keyboard warrior, to write really horrible words in an instant without thinking.
Yes.
Because you're just like this. And it's very easy to cancel at the last minute, which is rude. You couldn't do that before. There are so many things that phones are good for, but there are a lot of things that they are bad for. And AI similarly. We could have a whole other podcast about that.
No, we can. Literally we can. Because I've had so many people turn around to me. I don't know if you ever heard a story of a man who went on holiday, so I'll just quickly say it kindly. So there was a man who went on holiday. He was a voiceover. That was his job, you know. And he decided to take his kids on holiday. And he said to obviously his boss, I'll be back so we can do the rest of the voiceovers that we need to do in order to have them out in the right time and the right day. Sure. Anyways, he went and he came back. He lost his job because AI took over. So basically what they did is they had this app or software where you put the person's the person's voice in the app, and what it does now, he's got his voice.
Of course.
So all they need to do is type in what the AI needs to say, and then they save a huge amount of money. They just have to pay for the app, you know, and the app wouldn't be that very much.
And time efficient, and there's so many examples like that. I saw a post the other day with a doctor who's taken 20 years to study x-rays of lungs, and he can spot pneumonia as a result of his studies in, you know, quite quickly. But like maybe half an hour he will study the x-ray, and then he will say this lung, X, Y, Z. AI did it in 3 seconds.
No, it gets my blood slightly boiling when we talk about it.
I know, you think, well, that's wonderful because then more people can be treated, and there's so many waiting lists and things, and doctors are stressed with the amount of people they need to see, but it's frightening. Similarly with what you said about the voiceover. So as a writer, my writing's all over the internet. So AI has it. So someone can say, oh, write a blog in the voice of Sally Freedman or in the style of Sally Freedman about sexism in football. Voila.
Yeah.
Done. And it's published. I didn't write it. Similarly, if I say, here's my first book, I want to write a second book, use my first book in the same style and write it, it will write a book. A robot will write my book. It's I don't know. And especially because I write first person pieces a lot, and it's my opinion.
Yeah, same.
no one knows my opinion apart from me.
Exactly that.
Creativity and imagination, that comes from my soul, not a computer's soul. They don't have one. So I have a tiny bit of hope that I can still forge some kind of writing career.
As long as we don't go into the times of Terminator, because
gosh, yeah, it's frightening.
Yeah.
What might happen soon?
Yeah, well,
it's really frightening. Robots were running the London Marathon. Yeah, Google it.
My face just said everything.
There were robots running the London Marathon.
Okay, that's a whole nother podcast right there, Sally. That's a whole nother podcast. So, for me, if there was one quote that represented you as a person, what quote would that be and why?
If you don't shoot, you don't score.
That is very true. I like that. 100%.
So I have a few, so that one rolled off my tongue quite quickly.
Yeah, it did. It was like, Doop.
Yeah, must have been asked that question before, but that's in my DNA and my makeup. Again, it relates back to what we were saying before, take every opportunity. And when I used to play football, the coach would always scream, shoot, Sally, shoot, shoot, shoot. And when I watch football, I often scream at the players, shoot, shoot, shoot. And you don't do it enough. And if you don't shoot, you simply don't score. Of course, the pass might be the better option. So there is a reason not to shoot sometimes. But you must have a go, have a try. What's the worst that can happen? And if we think about the worst, you miss. But at least you tried in that scenario. And similarly with life, when you wake up every morning and you think, what's the worst that can happen today? It's not, a glass half empty perspective. It's not necessarily a good mindset all the time. But then if your expectations are lower and this might go wrong and this might go wrong, when everything goes right, you feel wonderful.
That is true. That is
so it's, true. Of course, the place you wanted to go for lunch, it's closed just by chance. They closed today for someone sick. But you really wanted to go for lunch there. And you can either go, I'm so frustrated. I've been dreaming about that burger all morning. And now I can't have the burger I was dreaming about. Or you can go, wow, okay, there's a new place I want to discover. I haven't been there yet. This is my opportunity. So you see your mindset changes depending on your expectations. I don't know if I've explained that too well.
No, you did explain it right, because sometimes I find the spontaneity of things in life can help also as well. So, for example, if you don't get to go to that restaurant or that shop or have that burger, like you said.
Yeah, it's a path.
Maybe
it's the universe telling us
exactly something. That. And I go with that all the time. I go with that literally all the time. Sally, if I put you on a desert island and I said to you, you're allowed to speak to an activist, a musician, and a president to help change the world in a better way.
Oh, gosh.
Who would you take on the island to have a conversation with for 24 hours?
Tell me again, an activist, a president, and a...
Musician.
Okay.
Because I always believe music has power and it brings people together.
Yeah. Gosh.
A president, just because they have power, naturally.
Yeah. President would have to be female, Margaret Thatcher.
There you go. Hey, I haven't heard her name in a little while, which is nice.
As a female, and I think she'd have some amazing stories to tell. Musician, there are lots. I think Robbie Williams is an entertainer, and if I'm only with them for 24 hours, entertainment and having fun is important. So I think he'd bring that element to the group, diversity of thought and having someone fun and making jokes. That's how I'd see him. I've seen him live a few times, and before I wasn't even a Robbie Williams fan. I just went along, his friends got tickets, and I just couldn't believe what an incredible entertainer he was. So I'd hope that he'd show me that side of him on a desert island. And then an activist, that's a tough one too. Who would I choose as an activist? So I've got Margaret Thatcher, Robbie Williams, someone that is really powerful. I mean, I talked about Ian Wright before, and I only met him for 2 minutes, but I think he is a male ally for women's sport. Mm-hmm. So I'd invite him along too, as my activist, because he speaks up a lot, and he does a lot for women in football and women in sport in general. So there you go. That would be an interesting dinner.
It would be, actually.
Or a boat trip. Ian Wright, Robbie Williams, and Margaret Thatcher, and me. And you'd get an invite too, of course.
Oh, I'll be looking from the boat, so it's completely fine.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Let me know when we're there.
Yeah, definitely. So it'd be nice, somewhere nice and warm. And I always said, if the world goes in the way that it seems like it's going at the moment, the one thing I would go is go and buy my own island somewhere where it's
cool.
peaceful.
I'll visit. No, with pleasure.
You have
coming.
an invitation, so the island will be this massive island where the rules will be of peace and kindness, because I believe in that very much. And
great.
So there's loads of things there. So I've only got 2 more for you, but my second to last question, Sally, is legacy plays a big part. It defines who we are, but it also helps us within our lives. A lot of people seem to think that legacy is only when we pass away, when we leave memories behind in order for other people to hear and see what we've done in our lives. But I don't believe that at all. I believe legacy is an everyday occurrence in what we say to people we touch, how we speak to them, how we interact with people. And I think this is so important. But in your mind, what does legacy mean to you? Because your opinion is just as important as mine.
Sure. So I think after penning my book, I've got even more of a responsibility now to speak up and educate, as I have a platform to do that. And that's my way of leaving a legacy. For example, recently I was invited to talk to students at the International School of Geneva here in Switzerland, year 9 students who were doing a project on gender equality. And so, of course, I jumped at the opportunity and I went and talked to these students, and I only had half an hour, but I hope if one of them, as a result of that talk, changes their attitude towards sexism and calls it out, I've hit the jackpot. I've left a legacy. That's all I can hope for. Of course, I'm not David Beckham. I don't have 3 million trillion followers, but I have a small voice. And my way of leaving a legacy is educating students, people in the workplace, doing podcasts such as this one, saying yes to utilizing my skill set that I've gained from working and writing a book. It'd be very wrong of me to just write my book and be like, okay, that's done. Because one of the solutions I talk about is education.
Yes, which plays a big part.
Legacy for me is how I can deliver that education and play a small part in the jigsaw puzzle to help change the perception of sexism.
I think you've done that already.
Thank you. Well, I'll keep doing it.
Yeah, keep doing it, because we need more people like you in the world who have those conversations and knock down those walls that people seem to try and build. For us not to be able to climb over or walk over, but now we're just going to walk through. Because when you have people who do things that are not normal, because I don't believe in the word normal, but it just see things in a different way, we're able to do a lot more things, and we give the next generation a easier route to get to where they want to be in life and achieve what they want to achieve. So for me, that plays a massive part. Before I have the chance of humbly saying thank you to you for coming on the show, I would love for everyone to be able to find you, find your book, tell us where we can have a conversation with you or interact with you, or just know more about Sally herself.
Sure. So I have a website. It's very easy, sally-freedman.com.
Yes.
My Instagram is @SallyFreedman. The book, Get Your Tits Out for the Lads, is available on amazon.co.uk and lots of other bookshops and websites too. It's available as an ebook and a paperback. It's a very short conversational read and great book to take on a plane, a train. It's light. It's about 150 pages. You might get a few laughs from people around when they read the title, so it's a conversation starter. But people that have read it tell me that, especially those that know me, that I write in a similar way to I speak. So it's like I'm having a chat with you.
Yeah.
It's very conversational. It's not full of academic spiel and language that's difficult to understand. It's written in an easy way. That's a little bit about me and where you can find out more.
Sally, I would like to say thank you so much for taking your time. And guys, Sally got really early this morning to have this podcast with me, so that's an extra one as well. Sally, I want to thank you so much for taking your time to come on the Ask People podcast show, for being the vulnerable, kind person, but also passionate in the way that you are, to move away those boundaries that are in front of us. From me to you, thank you so much for your time.
And thank you, Savia, for your time and for getting up super early too. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
No, you are more than welcome. And guys, I want to thank you so much for listening to the Ask People podcast. And please remember, you can subscribe and leave us a review on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, or any other platform that you prefer listening to. You can also listen to the Ask People podcast every Tuesday, where we put out a new pre-recorded version of the Ask People podcast for you guys to always listen to. And remember, there are 6 seasons, so you can always go back to the first one and work your way through them. Guys, on Wednesdays on Heart Songs Live, we put out the pre-recorded version that is on Tuesday, on Wednesday on the radio for you to listen to at 9 p.m. So that's also another platform for you to listen to the Ask People podcast. And guys, go on the Savia Rocks website if you would like to see more updates on Savia Rocks, and also if you'd like to see more updates on the Ask People podcast, or read any of the inspirational stories that come out on Tuesday, where I write a piece on every guest who comes on the show, which is really nice about their story, which is wonderful. And this is where I say to you guys, thank you so much for listening. Stay happy, stay positive, and as always, please continue to be kind to one another. Take care.
Society has made me want to validate me from my illusion that awaits me, from how the people will perceive me. It's my illusion that awaits me. We fight in our war with ourselves. Our mental health is silencing us from our heart. Social media is taking our time from connecting with each other, soul to soul. Why we dance on TikTok, strike a post on Instagram, fight the web on a Twitter feed, link a thing on Snapchat. Why we dance on TikTok, strike a post on a Instagram, fight the web on a Twitter feed.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed chatting with you, Savia.
Inside me, but the social media's corrupting me from being who I am every day. Different possibilities within inside me. We fight in our war with ourselves. Our mental health is silencing us from our heart. Social media is taking our time from connecting with each other, soul to soul. Why we dance on TikTok, strike a post on Instagram, fight the web on a Twitter feed, link a thing on Snapchat. Why we dance on TikTok, strike a post on a Instagram, fight the web on a Twitter feed, link a thing on Snapchat. Why we dance on TikTok? 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 It's taking our time. Why we dance on TikTok? Each other soul to soul. Why we dance on TikTok?